Hello, my name is Veronica Leger, and I am class of 1990, and I am very happy to introduce my classmate, Sanjay Parthasarathy. And he earned his master's degree in engineering from MIT, as well as his master's from MIT Sloan, and is a member of the North American Executive Board at MIT Sloan. He's an engineer and artist who loves building and creating new businesses. Sanjay concluded his 19-year tenure at Microsoft as VP of the Startup Business Accelerator, a division that he created to focus on building startups at Microsoft. In 2012, Sanjay founded Index, a big data startup that is helping consumer brands tackle the challenges of real-time commerce. In addition to its product database, Index offers customized app and API for retailers to tap into the platform and gain immediate insight based on consumer preferences. He's here today to discuss the ways in which technology and personalized digital experiences, will not only transform the way that we live, but will also disrupt commerce in the upcoming years. Please join me in welcoming Sanjay.
Thank you, Veronica. It's great to be here, isn't it? Yeah. 25 years, it's just flown by. My journey actually on this subject started right here at MIT Sloan about 26 years ago. In 1988, I had the privilege of working with Dean Glenn Urban and a set of students, one of whom is right there, Scott Halstead. Scott. So at that time, we were putting together an interactive system, 1988, 89, to test whether people would buy cars without ever going into a showroom. So only using computers. We used video, we used audio, we used multimedia, that's what you used to call it, to figure out if people would buy cars online. And this was 1988. And even then, the answer was yes, they would. And that's where my journey started on this topic. And then Microsoft intervened. But I'm happy to say that the last 4 years, I've been exploring this topic again with my new startup. And, 1988, 89 really was pretty simple for retailers, for commerce. You had to take care of the 4 Ps. That's what we learned, right? Product, price, promotion, place, location, or location within a store. And if you did a good job of that, you had a good business. But we all know that's changed, right? And we think the change is over. It's not. It's just starting. That's the proposition I want to put in front of you, that the disruption of commerce really is just beginning. And the way I think about it is the things that are disrupting commerce are 3 Ps and 1 D. I couldn't fit it into 4 Ps. Just couldn't do it. So I'm going to talk about the 3 Ps and 1 D and what that means. So the first P is what I'll call pervasive commerce, right? And has a lot to do with technology. It wasn't that long ago when we had to go to a store. You had to go to a destination, a physical location. And whatever you bought, you struggled with it, you brought it to the car, or you had people, bring it home. How many of you remember that? Right? Do you do that anymore? Maybe not. So destination commerce was, where was that? And in 1993, Amazon was founded. It was still destination commerce. You still had to go to, instead of a physical location, a virtual location on the web, but you still had to go somewhere. Now, in the 2000s, you still went somewhere, but it was a search engine, Google, and it helped you find whatever you wanted to find, wherever it was. That was a dramatic improvement. You didn't have to know that you had to go to e-commerce location X to get something. Now what's happening is that it's all coming to you. Your friends are posting on Pinterest, or you're hearing about some product being tweeted on Twitter, this Lily drone. I mean, did anybody hear about the Lily drone in the last month or so? Well, then you're not on any of these social networks then. But it is becoming, commerce is becoming part of the social network. The last week, Pinterest, Google have both announced that you'll have a buy button wherever you are, right? Now, I'm going to propose that it's not just in these locations. You're going to encounter products and commerce wherever you are. Right here, right now, there's an opportunity for you to learn and maybe even buy something. Now, every application you use, every piece of software you use, every physical device you use will be a place, will have the opportunity to inform and educate you. You're walking down the street, you see something interesting, a car or a sofa, you point your camera at it, and it'll tell you more about what you're pointing the camera at. You're browsing a blog or reading a piece of news, you should be able to find more about the latest LCD TV right there without having to go plug that term into a search engine. That is happening. So pervasiveness driven by technology. The second P is personalized. Now, at one point, the epitome of personalization was Sears through the catalog. And really, the personalization that they did was quite innovative. Assortment. You could find anything you wanted in a department store, right? It was the shotgun approach. If you wanted something, just one thing, you could go in, you could find it. And Amazon came along and just took it up another notch. 250 million products. 250 million products on Amazon. And that was the beginning of the end of the department store, right? Now, assortment was the step function in personalization, but since then, you're starting to see more and more personalization through curation. Costco, caters to the volume buyer by curating special products at volume. So membership is a way to do personalization. You can subscribe to almost anything now. I feel odd to say this, but I subscribe to an ice cream service. It's a great ice cream service. It's called Salt and Straw from Portland. And every month we get 5 wonderful flavors of ice cream you can never find anywhere. You can subscribe to cosmetics. You can subscribe to essentials, not essentials, whatever you want. And they learn more and more and personalize more and more to your taste. The next generation of personalization, though, is going to change all of the rules. And this is also driven by technology. And it is much more about the present, the context. A lot of what personalization has done has been based on the past. Your history. So Amazon, for example, can personalize based on your purchases, your past purchases. But today, with new technology for context, you can personalize in the present, in real time. What technology am I talking about? Sensors are everywhere, right? It's not just in your phone. It's going to be in the store as you walk down the aisle. It's tracking you on the web. We are sensing, you are being sensed. Not just the NSA is doing this, everybody's doing this, right? And not just the sensors, you also have these broadcast networks, not just Wi-Fi, but these micro networks with the range that you're walking by a suit that is interesting to you, and the suit's going to beep at you, okay? But because the range of that network is really a couple of feet. So context, my gold standard for context is Netflix. And Netflix is an amazing, amazing company. What they did was they took all their movies and tagged it with 73,000 different attributes, as we call them, tags, descriptions. So if you ever wanted a post-apocalyptic romantic comedy, you'll find one, okay? But it took a lot of work. because what they did was to tag all of the different ways people describe things, they're interested in things, and then they match it to your mood. They match it to your context. They match it to your present. That's why they've been so successful. And this is going to happen not just for digital content, but for every kind of product. Being able to understand at a very fundamental level what something means to you, not just what it is, and then match it to your mood, your present, your context. Now, it has to be delivered in real time because you can't just say, hey, I'll wait for it. And people want to have this right away, that personalized experience. And there are a whole bunch of technologies. I'm going to talk about some of these in the next P. But keep in mind that this has to be done in the moment, in the now, on demand. The third P is participation, right? Commerce has always been participative. You've bargained, you still do in most parts of the world. That energy, that back and forth is part of the process. Now, that has come back in some ways. People participate by expressing their opinion about what they buy or want to own. And people tweet about it, people pin it, people do all kinds of things to participate in the buying experience and the selling experience. People are also participating in the creation of products. There's this online funding venue called Kickstarter where you can fund products that you think you might want. And the most funded project on Kickstarter was $20 million, which is more than most people raise through venture capital, for the Pebble watch. So you can go fund things that you think you might need. That's how people are participating in product creation. You can also print things. You can participate. There's a whole movement called the open design movement, where people share designs, and then I can tweak it. I can participate in the evolution of the design, and I can put it back into the open design community. And then I can print it. There are these machines that you could print a lot of things in your home or in your neighborhood. So the level of participation is going from writing reviews to actually creating products and adding and improving things as time goes on. The D, the one that I couldn't fit, to me, the internet has become the stock market for goods and services. That's how I think about the internet. Things are changing all the time. Things are moving around. The price that you get is different than the price that you will get for the same product from the same place, because people are constantly looking at demand and supply and prices and competition in the market and adjusting. It is a lot more complicated than the stock market. Bloomberg gets 24 different feeds from different exchanges, but the internet, there is no exchange. It's just out there. And so it is a fascinating, wilderness, complicated, wonderful, obscure place. And my job today is to try to make it as transparent as possible. We've always had deals, right? Coupons, people have been clipping coupons for years. You get them online now. But something else is happening. People are starting to conserve supply and demand. I use the example of the sharing economy. We now share cars. We now share all kinds of large capital investments. But it's not that far off that we're going to share every physical good. If I'm not going to use something more than 2 or 3 times, there is no reason to keep that capital captive in my house. Why can't I share it with my neighborhood? Okay, so that is pretty transformative in terms of how you think about price and the dynamic nature of demand and supply. So pervasive, the ability to learn about, interact with, and buy products wherever you are, walking down the street, anywhere on the web. Participative, totally personalized to your present context, and completely dynamic. It's so interesting, the time we find ourselves in this particular space. So I'm gonna try to make 6 predictions none of which will happen, I'm sure. But it's fun to try to figure out where to bet on, right? My first is brands will rule. Retailers operate on razor-thin margins. Did you know that all of the profit that Costco makes comes from its $55 membership? Most retailers have a 1% to 2% margin if they're lucky. Do you think they have the money to invest in technology to make things more participative, more personalized, more pervasive? Not many will. And the vanguard of brands rule is Apple. Apple is a brand. They figured out with technology they really don't need too many retailers. They can go direct. They can go direct. They can create the brand. They can create the demand. They can create the need. What does this mean? I think Fifth Avenue and all of those main streets, high streets, are going to look very different 10 years from now. You're not going to see too many specialist retailers. You're going to find lots of brands, small brands, niche brands, large brands going direct. Basically a showroom for you to buy online. This is going to have a huge impact on the jobs economy. This is going to have a huge impact in the way we think about buying. How many of you hate those ads that keep tracking you around? And you visit some place and you end up buying it, but it still follows you around, right? It's called retargeting. It's retargeting, but they're a little bit better than the original ads, which were those banner ads, especially the ones that expanded the moment you went there. And then you had search ads. At least that was kind of relevant to what you were looking for. I think that's going to change. It has to change because it's the most inefficient way of using your money. And the more you know about what a person is looking for, what their context is, you have the opportunity to target the exact product with the right price, the right time, to the right person, in the right place. And I think that's actually going to make it a lot more efficient for brands to communicate with their customers. I talked about this already. It is going to be the stock market. You are going to be able to put out bids, for things that you want, and people will look at those bids, and they will either fulfill it or ask a different price. And you have the ability to, in real time, you don't have to do it personally because I think your software will do it for you, but there is going to be this give and take in the stock market of goods and services, which is the internet. Remember the time when it used to take about an hour to download a movie online? Right? It doesn't take an hour now. But we're in the same place for downloading products. And I don't mean downloading it, in bits, in digital bits. You will be able to get a product delivered in less than an hour through, Uber, through drones, and maybe through a replicator. But, you don't have to go all the way there to get a product delivered to you within an hour. And drones are real. They're coming. They're here, actually. They're doing the non-consumery things right now, but you will be able to download whatever product you want through an Uber or a drone or other mechanisms. I bet you that every piece of software that you use will be aware of products and will be able to inform, educate, sell you products. The analogy I'd like to use is location. 10 years ago, or even less, we all used to have maps, those TripIt maps, AAA maps, go from point A to point B. Now we take it for granted that location is part of any device, whether it's a car that you get into or your phone or one of those activity tracking devices. Everything has a GPS. Everything understands location. Somebody sends you an email with their address. It's immediately highlighted, and you can click on it, and you can get the directions and the time that it's going to take to get there. It's happened to location. It's going to happen to commerce. A friend sends you an email, with a obtuse reference to a product. That email will be able to recognize what it is and surface that information if you need it to. Okay? And finally, artificial intelligence. You are going to be able to let loose on the world augmented or artificial intelligence that acts on your behalf and is able to seek out and find and buy the things that you need. There's always going to be a place and a time to go out and touch and feel something, but most of what we need doesn't need that. It's amazing to me that, categories like jewelry are majority sold online today. There are some categories like diapers, 80% of diapers are sold online, give or take. You can understand that because who likes carrying diapers and your baby and opening the car door? I mean, there's no real reason to do that. But jewelry? It's fascinating, in terms of what is going online. And this has happened slowly so far. There's estimates that 10 to 12% of commerce is online today. And you shouldn't expect it's going to take the same amount of time for the next 10 to 12%, because there's a point at which there's a step function and it goes from about 20% to 80% overnight. And that is the opportunity. That's the situation. That's what's happening to commerce. So with that, let me stop and open it up for questions. Yes, ma'am.
Personalization and social media influencing each other in terms of buying and selling. Where do you see advertisement going?
I see advertising being much more targeted, and there are 3 data sets. Now I'm going to go a little bit geeky maybe. There are 3 sets of data that are very interesting and very useful. One is about the customer or the consumer. You call it customer intelligence. There's lots of different areas, everything from sentiment analysis to behavioral analysis. And so that's one body of work. The second body of work is what I'll call business intelligence. And that's knowing what's going on in the business, what's in inventory, what's out of stock, what's in stock, how long is it going to take me to procure something. And the third is what Netflix does really well, which is product intelligence, really knowing the meaning or the value of a product to somebody. And advertising hasn't had all of these 3 things. It's really only had customer intelligence to work with. When you connect customer intelligence to the business, to the product intelligence, then you can do the targeting that most people have been trying to do for years. People want targeted ads. It hasn't been possible yet. When it's possible, it will happen. So then you will be able to, the business model of advertising changes to very precise, did it work? Did that targeting work or not? So that's how I think advertising is going to change. The creative part is still going to be all good. It's just that who do you target the creative at? The best advertisers in my mind are politicians, because politicians have a different message for every city in the US. They spend a lot of money. They're raising $1 billion, but they've got the front end right. They don't have the technology right. But yes, sir. I'll come to you.
Building on that point, I'm wondering what good is targeting in advertising when users can legally block every single ad they ever see?
And they should. If it's useless, they should, right?
Even if it is useful, why would I want to see ads?
Because I think the ads have to take on the role of informing and educating. I think if ads are purely targeted at getting you to click, I think the point is kind of lost. Most of us have a need that emerges over time. We do go do research. One of the things that people use the most to make decisions today is customer reviews, reviews of products. So there is a need for information. If ads provide that information, as opposed to trying, subterfuge and underhanded means of closing your business, then you should block it, right? If it is not informative, if it is not educational, if it doesn't help you make a decision, then block it. And that's why the quality of ads are going to go up as well, because blocking technology is improving. Right. So it's a good thing. Yes, sir.
how serious are you about your 3 Ps and 1D replacing the 4 Ps? Because it seems that they really serve different purposes. You're describing new trends in buying and selling, particularly in the retail side, and the 4 Ps really describe the components of a marketing department or the things that a marketer needs to think about.
Yeah, I'm being a little provocative. I don't think they go away. Place has transformed its meaning. Obviously, place now means position in a search engine results as opposed to in a physical location or at the end cap. So I mean, if you have a shitty product, you're not going to sell, right? And so it is an overlay, I think, on top of the basics. Yeah, and the problem is a lot of people have very good products, and then the differentiation happens with these 3 Ps and a D.
Yeah, or for promotion.
Yeah.
The old-fashioned way of thinking things, and then these are different aspects of promotion that are necessary.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the bias is moving more towards the technology, though, both at the product creation side as well as the merchandising end. Yes.
I have a question. I came from another reunion last weekend where we were thinking to ourselves, gee, the world can't afford another generation of MBAs like we had last time. And we need to put
My generation?
No, our generation.
Okay, sorry.
So but really I was very jazzed to hear your talk because it seems to me there's a place in here where you could put the consumers. It could put filters in for example, the externality cost of the products that they're buying. Are they local? Are
Sure.
they using child labor? And so there could be different causes that are dear to your heart that you could, not buy conflict diamonds or products produced with child labor or eggs from battery farms and all of that bad stuff that you don't know about.
Right.
And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how could something like that come into your new world?
Yeah. So I'm a privacy activist. I mean, I think of privacy being a very important part of all of what we do, and so permission is a very important aspect of how we need to think about this technology. And permissions, you can think about it broadly. You can think about permitting your ambient agent to only consider things that meet a certain set of criteria and values that you hold, right? And it's not just as, privacy and security for your credit cards. It's really privacy and security and the ability to control your value system.
The moral value,
Yeah.
the put your values in action in your commerce automatically.
That's right.
That would be awesome.
That's right. And it's not coming fast enough, but it will come. The same way as as it relates to ads.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
What you're talking about is very exciting. I often introduce myself as an overeducated real estate developer, and the overeducation is math and computer science at MIT. But I was building office buildings in Washington, D.C., and in 1980 I could foresee the evolution of technologies as you're talking, clearly not quite as far, but I was saying that at a level of abstraction, an office building is a computer. I said, what do you do in an office building? You do office work. What is office work? It's processing and communicating information. But it's a long-term fixed asset, and you wanted to believe from a businessman's point of view that you built an appreciating asset, not a depreciating asset. So I spent a year and a half just thinking about that and came up with the term virtual adjacency. The ability to do something as though you're there without actually being there. And I said, as these technologies advance, the menu of what we can do and the quality of what we can accomplish will be increasingly significant. I was involved with a telecom company that was going to run fiber to homes. I mean, this is 1980, 82, 84. Because to me, the key to virtual adjacency is bandwidth. You've got to be able to throw bandwidth at a problem the way we today throw RAM or storage, memory storage. I mean, when I was in school, you couldn't say megabyte. I mean, core was kilobytes, and core was really expensive. Anyway, we talked about targeted advertising as a way to transform the television industry. Imagine you're a television subscriber And you get different ads than your neighbor does because you're actually interested in different things.
You don't have television in the future.
Well, but you will have
But you're right.
you
That's
will have
just being.
screens and you will have interaction that is multimedia.
That's right. Exactly.
But the privacy is very important, and what I was imagining was that you would, instead of charging somebody a subscription fee, if they would give you some data about things that they were actually interested in, then what they would get is they would get ads that they might actually be interested in seeing, and you would have an advertising revenue model that would pay. So talk about that.
Yeah. So there is a business model that you can imagine where I trade my personal information for some benefit.
Right.
Right. I mean, and you know, with digital currency, you know, all kinds of loyalty programs, this is possible, right? And it's being done in trivial ways, but you know, part of this ambient assistant really is this ability to trade. If you give me more information, I will take a look at your product. Kind of trade, and that's again the stock market model that I envision, not just for the price of the product, the goods and services, but also for the price of your personal information. Some people say privacy is dead. I think that assumes a world where, personal data is not treated as a valuable commodity. And I think models will emerge where you're able to trade your personal data for goods and services. Yes, ma'am.
So, how do you see this evolution of what you have presented here that can help improve healthcare?
Yeah. I mean, one of the again, I'm an activist on a couple of different fronts, a digital activist. One is transparency. I think a lot of the challenges that we face, at least in commerce, has to do with the lack of transparency. You know, imagine, I'm sure all of you have bought airline tickets online. There was a time when Sabre and Amadeus really didn't want to let go of that data because they thought that the prices would go to zero. It didn't go to zero. Transparency just expanded the market, okay? And I think healthcare is at that point where the lack of transparency for, not just for, procedures, which are very dependent on local availability and supply, but even common drugs, non-prescription drugs, the lack of transparency, I think, just adds to the burden and expense of the general population. So for healthcare, I think the more data that can be made transparent, like the airline industry, that will transform, I think, will begin the transformation of the healthcare industry. I think that's the place to start. Yeah.
All these concepts apply to business, to consumer business, but how do you see technology and this concept impacting B2B?
Yeah, so my company is actually completely B2B, right? So it actually, the ability to use customer intelligence, business intelligence, and product intelligence actually extends throughout the entire product life cycle, right? When you are sourcing materials for the product that you want to build, when you're creating the product that you want to build, right? This kind of information that is, at the consumer end is actually helpful to you. There's a more efficient supply chain model based on this information, just as there is a more efficient demand interaction with this data. So the more we look at it, the more we see, more we realize that, this kind of information, this kind of data, this kind of insights actually applies to the entire supply chain. Glenn?
Before I ask my question, I just want to confirm, you didn't come back from the future to goof on us or something.
No.
Like that, right? All right.
That would be you.
Right. Thank you. Your discussion and our conversation has been talking about the information from the brand and the product perspective, and at the risk of putting privacy aside, how do you monetize the data that you're collecting or search engines are collecting and share it, ethically, but share it and make money off of that massive pool of data?
It's really not the data, I think. I mean, data is valuable because there's so much of
algorithms
it,
around
and
the
people can't. There isn't enough infrastructure to have it all in one place. What is really interesting is the insights from the data, right? If you knew that it would be cheaper to buy a certain good or service at a particular time of the year, right? That is value. I mean, that has a monetary value, right? And there is. I mean, this is what Uber is doing, right? They're addressing. You don't know when you're trying to hail a cab in New York in the rain how long you're going to have to stand out in the rain. Uber makes that completely transparent, right? And then you can decide whether you want to pay 5x or 10x or 3x, right? And so I think, as I mentioned earlier, for healthcare, the value in the data at large is transparency. And the value in the personal data is the ability to not go waste money doing all these ads that irritate people. So there's value in every piece of data in this entire food chain, and each one will have a different way to monetize it, but it is valuable.
And how can Uber, with all that collective data on the hundreds of individuals, how can they monetize that data and make money off of it? Because it seems like a very powerful asset.
Yeah, they're killing the taxi cab companies.
No, can they share it, or can they sell it, or?
Yeah, I mean, they are. I believe they're actually going to share it because they now have an API, an application interface, where you can actually embed the Uber in any application, right? And so you're buying a ticket, a train ticket, and you can basically say, hey, have a cab pick me up. So they're collaborating with all of the different parts of the food chain that they impact. That's how they make money for themselves, and they make money for others. Because the person who embeds Uber in their app will get a referral fee as well. Am I answering your question?
Yeah, that was helpful.
Okay.
This is a quick one. I wonder if anyone else has noticed that when you buy concert tickets on Ticketmaster, the price changes almost on an hourly basis.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I bought a group of tickets, and I bought 8 tickets, and then I wanted to add another 2. And the 8 tickets, the second 2 tickets were in the same row, right next to the others, and they were $20 more per ticket.
Yeah, I mean, dynamic pricing is here. I mean, I'm surprised people don't. I'm surprised it's not done all the time. I haven't given anybody an opportunity over here. I should. Yeah.
I was just wondering, it's kind of a 2-part question. So firstly, as you mentioned, security has been an issue over the last few years. And recently I know PayPal has changed their terms of services. There have been uproars about that. Same with Uber, actually, based on their location tracking. How much of a challenge will it be for the future of companies to be able to implement things like sensors and beacons like you were talking about in order for tracking purposes? Because as it seems it's going today, people are trying to move away from tracking technology to try and get that freedom back that they feel like they want. And
Yeah.
also, if it does happen, what do you think is the timeline for that? When would we be able to see this kind of thing in the consumer world?
Yeah, I mean, this is a hard issue. I'm not sure I have an answer for that. I think being able to secure your data or get rid of the data. I mean, you should have a choice. I mean, we have the opportunity to purge our browser cache, when we want to. So we can delete cookies when we want to. How do we delete? How do we have access to and delete information that other people have about us? Really tough problem. I think it's a policy problem. I mean, Europe has tried to address some of this because, with a hammer. I mean, it's not the best way to do it. Data has to be within the EU, has to be stored in the EU, so they have access to it and they can deliver policy. This is a tough one. I don't have a simple answer. Yes?
What type of potential do you see to develop technologies that will allow individual consumers to push back on dynamic pricing resulting from our digital footprint indicating where they can target products to us versus our neighbors?
Yeah, and the ability to control your profile, I think. The ability, I mean, today in browsers you have an anonymized feature. It's become a standard part of a browser. You're going to have that. You are going to be able to shop anonymously, right? But if you want to expose your personal preferences because you have the trust and a belief in who you're going to shop with, then you expose that data. So you should have a blackout and varying degrees of sharing. Yeah.
Yeah, a question on artificial intelligence.
Mhm.
Front board here. So when I thought about artificial intelligence, I thought about some of the latest development like deep learning, these machines that are intelligent, so we learn how to play. But then when you talk about this ambient shopping system, the idea that came to mind is like a recommendation in steroids kind of thing. That seems to be leaving on the table a lot of the power of IE. So I was wondering, can you elaborate on the concept of these ambient shopping assistants and what they could do for us?
Yeah, I mean, the way I think about this is you might want to save time. It really comes down to all of the different use cases that you might have. If you wanted to save time, if you wanted to find the thing that's hard to find, if you're a record collector and like me, spend a lot of time in record stores looking for stuff that are almost impossible to find, I would rather release an agent to travel around the world, the web world, trying to find it for me. Because I can't be searching for this every minute of every day, right? So really it comes down to what kind of thing that you are looking to buy. I mean, wouldn't you like to create an agent? You're going to travel to Boston for the reunion. Did you create an agent to find the best tickets at the right price for you? I would like one, right? And so there are you'll create different agents for different things because not all agents will be able to learn everything all the time, right? I had a very interesting experience about 4 weeks ago. I was trying to schedule a calendar appointment with a VC, and I got a note from Amy, X.AI. This is a company that uses a calendaring agent to automatically schedule appointments that suit me and the person that I'm trying to schedule an appointment with. So X.AI, it works. So I was interacting with an agent, and Amy was very polite, very responsive, figuring out how to match my calendar and his. So I think initially you're going to start to get very task-oriented assistants, but over time, they're going to kind of add to each other and become more general purpose. Yes?
How do you see the future for e-commerce with groceries, food?
Yeah, I mean, I think food is one where I think it's going to be very, very dynamic. And the food is very driven by supply and demand. I mean, it's a commodity in some cases, and so I think that'll be the first that moves to based on quality, based on price, based on distance from the person who's buying it. Yeah, freshness. Pardon? And source. Yes, absolutely. That's the place I think is going to get most dynamic fastest. Yes.
So it sounds very interesting, the approach of personalized and participative. But if you think about it, most of the manufacturing industries rely on volumes to make the quantities and the prices lower, right? But personalized and participative are not going to give you volumes, because if you and I design shirts, your shirt is going to be totally different than the one I designed for me. And similarly probably with everyone in this room. So when does manufacturing really begin to pick up on that aspect of personalized at a cost that we are willing to pay as well? So it's very complex, and I don't think the industry is ready for that level of complexity, right?
There's several things happening in that space. So if you wanted to buy a very, very good Italian cotton, well-tailored shirt, you could get one for $70 today. Personalized to the threads that you use, for your plackets. Someone will come over to your office, take your measurements, send it off digitally to China, and you will get it in 2 weeks. So there's a lot of things happening in manufacturing. You can also, as MakerBot is an example where you're just starting to take baby steps of, being able to manufacture things in your home, or being able to manufacture things in your community center. People are fabricating homes with these very large, replicator type machines. And so I think manufacturing has gone over the years from very capital intensive, the power plants in Detroit with Ford, to much more compact, more and more compact. I mean, you're going from mainframes in manufacturing to personal computers. And so that trend, I think, will enable more and more manufacturing. So, a lot of the automobile components, let's take that industry, shouldn't need all of those machines. Certainly not that much capital investment. So, to a degree, you're going to be able to move these things along. Is the traditional manufacturing going to go away? No. But you can make shirts, you can make toys, you can make that odd-shaped screw that you needed. People are making guns, not necessarily a good thing, with these machines. Yeah.
There is an increasing move towards corporations becoming, say, social enterprises, and partly driven by the consumers wanting it that way. So in the 6 predictions that we made, I don't see that, and I wonder if that might be a way for us to kind of balance what the consumers are giving up in terms of privacy, because by being participative, they can guess and do things in the direction in which they want.
Yeah, I mean, I think you put the power back to the data. I mean, let's take the beer industry, right? I mean, who would have thought that Anheuser-Busch would have been bought by somebody else? I mean, can you imagine that? Who would have thought that the craft beer industry would be just surpassed all of Anheuser-Busch, I think, in this last month? I think there is a great deal, and it's basically, I think it's personalization, to different tastes. I think the power is already pulling back from these monolithic, it'll happen to banks too. The next big tech disruption.
I think you're still talking about, personalization from the point of view of personal consumption. I'm saying, isn't there an increasing desire to kind of give back and do social good?
Yeah.
And that's something consumers are demanding.
Yeah, and I think when you have small manufacturers who are more likely to be driven by a value system, people are more receptive to it. And you can see this in product labeling at a very, very high level, whether it's GMO or organic or those kinds of things. But I think, yes, people are paying more attention to it, and there is value there. So I agree with you. Sorry, you hurt your hand putting your hand up. I didn't see that. Okay.
So I'm very curious about how this fits into the developing world. I've spent quite a bit of time the last years traveling and working in developing countries, and I asked myself, what's going to happen here? When you went through those steps, I think there are some examples where in developing countries they might have even technologically jumped over a step. But in other cases, they seem so far behind, and I wonder, is this going to make a larger gap, or is it going to speed up a closing of the gap? Do you understand?
Yeah, no, I think it's going to speed up. I mean, I grew up in India. A large part of my current company is in India, and the speed at which people are adopting these technologies to empower themselves is astonishing. I think in most developing, at least in India, which I can talk about very specifically, access to information is hard. And, more information being delivered to people allows them to make better decisions. That empowers them. And I think, we've seen political change, we've seen economic change because of that empowering. So anything that empowers people with information, I support, even though it has sometimes unintended consequences in the short term. So I do think that, certainly in India's case, the mobile phone has been nothing but a good thing in the short term and the long term. I think we're close to exhausting all the questions.
limitations, that's anything that can limit this trend of increasingly personalization, pervasiveness. I would just use K-cups as a, like a cool example of, say, used to be, I just make coffee and just coffee and water with, coffee machine. But now with the K-cups, I do get personalized. I can select from a variety of flavors. But at the same time, the packaging, it's such a waste of, the plastics and stuff. And, so there is some trade-offs of increasingly personalized. I can also think of my son. Of course, now he's grown up, being fairly self-controlled, but used to be, he could use my credit card, buy something online that, who knows what from where, and if it happened that Jones could deliver it in an hour, I would be flooded with all these things that, it's, of course you could, develop apps and stuff like that can filter, control these, but I'm just saying, these are just, what I'm saying, is there a limitation? What do you see that may be a limit to this?
I think the limits are going to be our value system. I think it's possible, doesn't mean you have to do it. I think we'll make some mistakes. I think the pendulum will swing to one extreme, but it will come back. And I think the society's value system is going to drive what the balance is. Yeah.
Just when you thought you were out of questions, I wonder if you could say a little bit more about what you think might happen with pricing. We talked about, I think there's a lot of opportunity for personalized pricing to capture consumer surplus and charge everybody the highest price they will be willing to pay. That person who paid the extra $20 for the ticket, maybe that was because he owned the adjoining seats and the computer figured he'd be willing to pay more. So are there any trends? Are there differences between different jurisdictions, legal requirements for non-discriminatory pricing? We've heard how pricing can be discriminatory as well.
I think pricing is the last resort of not so competent business. If you have to resort to pricing, it's not a good thing. Most people think Amazon has the lowest pricing. It doesn't, right? Amazon does not have the lowest prices. Amazon on average is about 7.5% higher price than Walmart. They don't compete on price. They compete on other things, right? So pricing is the last resort of the technologically disadvantaged. So my view is pricing isn't the most important thing. It is about assortment, it's about service, it's about using technology to deliver the right experience.
Charge the highest possible price because, and take advantage of the information asymmetry. Sure. Because they have all the transparency works in their favor, especially when there's more context and other things, and it just gets very complex for the consumer to understand.
Fair point. Yes, you don't have to price it the lowest in order to get the business, but there is an opportunity to adjust pricing depending, modulo, being able to access that information that allows you to do the pricing properly. But dynamic pricing is here to stay. You just don't have to use it as the hammer for every problem. Yes?
A quick question about brands. How do you see them changing, particularly as traditional media and the mix of traditional media changes? In particular, how do you see brands being endowed with emotional characteristics like trust or glamour? Something that's non-rational, which is rather more straightforward.
I don't know. I don't think I'm actually qualified to answer that. But let me take a stab. Anyway, because ignorance hasn't held me back in the past. I look at the most valuable brands today. I mean, we all do. I mean, what are they? They're Apple, they're Google. They tend to be technology companies, I think. And I think, I was telling someone, I'm from the West Coast, And there seems to be, at least at technology companies, a certain level of authenticity that is lacking in cable companies, for example. And I think that authenticity has a great deal of value in the way consumers think about things. I was at Microsoft when we went through that horrendous Department of Justice antitrust case. And at the end of that case, I was asked to help with reaching out to software developers, because that's the lifeblood of Microsoft. If people aren't developing software on Windows, Microsoft dies. And after stumbling around for a while, we hit on a concept called Channel 9. Channel 9 is borrowed from United Airlines. You can listen in on air traffic control and the pilot. And Channel 9 was a way for us to take a camera into any office, anywhere at Microsoft, and talk to the person. So people could see that they were authentic human beings doing things they cared about because they felt that people needed it. And it actually turned, you could see the trust which had gotten to the very, very bottom bump up quite dramatically, only because we started to do things that made the company more transparent. I encouraged people to blog. We had 3,000 people blogging at the end of 2003 at the company, and our policy was don't be stupid. That was it, right? And so I'm a big believer in transparency and authenticity in terms of brands. And you can see this in a lot of different industries. The outdoor industry, the reason a lot of it is on the West Coast is because I think the culture there, it's very focused on people who hike for a lot of their time. So, having displayed my complete ignorance on this topic, I will leave you with transparency and authenticity are the hammer that you use when you have no other option. Thank you.